Let's start with an honest question. What phrase makes a man's heart race, but makes a woman say, finally? It happens in living rooms everywhere. I love you, but we need to talk. This chart shows the immediate physiological reactions to those 7 words. On the left side, the male's heart rate spikes as he wonders what he did wrong. On the right, the female's stress metric drops. She feels the relief of a problem finally being addressed. This moment exposes a deep tension within modern relationships. Love and good intentions still exist, but the bridge of communication has collapsed. A fatal failure in emotional translation triggers an invisible cycle of disconnection, even when the couple remains deeply committed to one another. If we pause that living room argument, we can see how the wife's psychological framework operates. For many women, the marriage experience centers on connection, the need to be heard and emotionally known without the fear of judgment. However, that connection often disappears under the mental load. The mental load is the continuous, invisible burden of planning, organizing, and remembering the thousands of details required to keep a household running. When a husband fails to share this specific mental burden, the wife feels unseen. As that feeling of being known diminishes, her emotional connection begins to cool into resentment. Under this weight, true intimacy feels impossible. When she says, "We need to talk," she is making a plea for the connection she needs to feel safe again. The husband operates within a different framework. He frequently experiences marriage through the need for validation and respect. He needs to feel that his efforts for the family actually matter. This misalignment triggers a defensive reflex. When the wife seeks connection through conversation, the husband interprets the request as a list of his personal failures. This diagram shows how this affects their physical relationship. Male logic uses physical intimacy to create an emotional connection. Female logic requires an emotional connection before feeling the desire for physical intimacy. Because they process safety and closeness in reverse order, their attempts to reach each other often drive them further apart. Back in the living room, the argument escalates through a loop called the demand-withdraw pattern. This is a cycle where one partner's request causes the other to pull away. The wife demands conversation for emotional safety. This overwhelms the husband, who retreats into silence to avoid criticism. His silence makes her pursue him more intensely. In this moment, both partners utilize opposite defense mechanisms to find safety, but both end up feeling isolated and misunderstood. Studies identify this specific pattern of emotional distance as the single highest predictor of divorce. Marriages rarely end in a sudden explosion. They slowly drift apart as these unresolved loops replace affection with silence. If we rewind the narrative to the start of the evening, we can see how to break this cycle using structured habits. The first habit is a weekly check-in. This is a scheduled, distraction-free conversation designed to audit the relationship's emotional health by asking specific questions like, "What made you feel loved this week?" Daily appreciation serves as a second tool. Acknowledging the spouse's work targets the wife's mental load while fulfilling the husband's need for validation. Simple physical micro-moments, like a hug, trigger a release of oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that functions as a biological bonding agent, chemically reducing stress and increasing trust between partners. These protocols replace reactive arguments with proactive communication, allowing each partner to speak a language the other can actually understand. These biological and psychological tools only work if there is a willingness to use them. Spouses must view their differences as complementary gifts rather than flaws, pairing her sensitivity with his stability. C.S. Lewis described love as the desire for the absolute good of the other, even when it is difficult. This is the grace required to keep trying those protocols when the cycle of conflict feels easier. Returning to our living room, the phrase, "we need to talk," no longer has to function as a trigger for a fight. By choosing to engage with grace rather than defensiveness, the couple breaks the cycle. They choose to see the conversation as an invitation to mature. Love functions as a choice and a covenant. That dreaded phrase is actually a gateway into a deeper, more resilient relationship.